Alrighty. Oop. Darn it. It's gonna be one of those days. I pushed the wrong bloody button. Never did that one before.
This is a recording of veterans' voices, and that is not a veteran voice in the background.
No, that's a doggy.
Not a service dog. Not a service dog.
All right, so I got the Zoom to Facebook here. I clicked the YouTube button. I don't know what that does even. I've never clicked that button before, and it seemed to not do anything.
See, that's the Air Force. I don't know what that does, but let's just push the button and find out.
I told you about, I had a crew come back in, and on the worksheet, it said does not work in the OFF mode. I told you about that, right?
Yeah.
All right. You know, it also gives me the option of going live on Veterans Action Council, so we can decide someday whether we want to go live on Veterans Action Council. All right, it looks like we're preparing to live.
Can't we do it all at once?
I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure what our limitations are.
Okay.
Meeting is now being.
Well, I suppose we ought to ask them too, but be a good idea, I think, if we could do it.
All right, this thing always gives me confirmation on Zoom before I actually see the confirmation on Facebook, but it looks like we're actually live. And welcome everybody. This is our 10th Veterans Voices modern edition, I guess you call it, Al. And it's very, very great to have Robert Jordan on today with us. A very honored visit for us to share some time with Robert. I really don't know what to say to everybody this morning. I feel like we're breaking such new ground, and we're starting to do such new things with cannabis policy here in Virginia and around the country. We've turned some sort of a corner. You know, we've got the leaders in the Senate and the House of Representatives and Congress starting to talk about this, where it was an obscure conversation on the margin. Now we got the leaders talking about it. And there's some sort of thing that's happened. And with you particularly, Robert, it seems like these things come to mind. You've really been on the forefront of cannabis activism, and I'm particularly pleased to have you here today. You want to say a word or two, Al?
Yeah, I do. I call him Bob. I think he prefers Bob, but Bob and I have been cohorts for, I don't know, at least 20 years, I suppose. And we've been friends for a long time too. We moved from cohort to friendship a long time ago. But Bob's one of those guys that will stand and fight. He's a Vietnam veteran like myself. And he stood and fought there, and he stood and fought in Florida. But that's his story. We're going to let you tell him, Bob, all about it. But I'd like you to meet my friend, Bob Jordan.
That means I'm up.
You can
say
talk
if you
now.
want to.
You're going to let the Army guy talk, right?
Well, what we want you to do, Bob, is tell people a little bit about where you grew up, where you're from, what got you into the military, what happened in the military, if anything, what happened after the military. And of course, we have to move on to the past a decade or more in Florida with you and your wife, Kathy, being such a prominent force in this state, well-respected force. So please talk to us, Bob. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I was born in Wilmington, Delaware. I grew up there, normal childhood, I guess. Wasn't real good at school. And then I left school early, turned around and got drafted. You know, it was all fun and games. And, you know, I had a 54 Chevy and had a girlfriend with, well, she was what they say. Anyhow, and I was happy go lucky. And then I got drafted, and boy, what an experience that was. Because see, back then, people don't understand it today, but you had one or two choices. You either went to jail or you went in the service. So I went in the service. I volunteered for the draft, and I got because you couldn't get a good job. The first thing an employer would ask you is if your military service has been satisfied, and say no, we'll come back when it is, because everybody got drafted back then. And that was an experience, you know. They taught us back there, hey, you ain't back on the block no more. Mom and Dad can't help you. Your ass belongs to me, and they meant it. Go through the process of, you know, the basic training, which was pretty tough. You know, different branches do it different, I guess. You know, but ours was pretty tough. And then I got out of basic training, and I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey. And from Fort Dix, New Jersey, now cannabis isn't even in the picture yet. So I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I was a wireman. Now that's going forever. But anyhow, that was an MOS, and you had to climb these telephone poles, put them spikes on your legs and climb the poles. So before up till noontime, where we broke for chow for lunch, they didn't turn around, and I was having a big fun. And then after chow, we went all the way up to the top of the pole, about 30, 35 feet. And I'm buckling, I'm getting ready to put my spikes on this guy. So he's all the way up at the top of the pole. And you put them spikes in, and then you held onto the pole with your left hand, and grabbed your rope, put it around the pole, and then bring it and click it into your other side so you can lean against the pole. Well, this guy's at the top of the pole, and he lets go of the pole to hook up. But he hit the ground, and I looked at him, and I thought, holy shit, he's dead. And he was wiggling around, and there was a medic over there in the Jeep, and he's sitting there smoking a cigarette. Medic. He gets up and walks over, and I said, man, you could have hurried up a little bit to help the guy, for Christ's sake. He said, look, if he died from the time I got from the Jeep over here, I couldn't help him anyhow. I thought, Jesus Christ, what I got myself into. But anyhow, after that, they told me to climb the poles. I said, I ain't climbing that pole. He said, you got to. I said, your ass. So they recycled me. And then what happened? So they got to the same part again, and they recycled me again. And we went to see this sergeant major, somebody. But me and this other guy, we're standing in front of this guy. This is fate. And he asked me what I did. I said, I did a lot of labor work and stuff like that, not too much. He asked the other guy, I said, what you do? He said, oh, I'm a mechanic. And he marked on these pieces of paper, but he had them crossed from, in other words, my paper was in front of him and his paper was in front of me, or vice versa. He had it mixed up. Anyhow, so we go outside, and I'm looking at the MOS he put us in, and this guy alongside me says, what's 11B? I knew exactly what that was. That's infantry. I said, I don't know. He said, what MOS do you got? And I said, he gave me 36B20. He said, what's that? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Come find out, wheel vehicle mechanic. He had the papers crossed. I was supposed to go in the infantry and went to wheel vehicle mechanic. Long story short, did a lot of good stuff there. Went down to Fort Knox, Kentucky, as did so good in the maintenance department. As a mechanic, they sent me down to Fort Knox, Kentucky to be a diesel mechanic on tanks. So I flew the group down there, and I was in charge and all this other stuff, made sure nobody went AWOL on us and all that, and got down there, we were in formation. The top come out, first sergeant come out and said, Jordan. I said, here, first sergeant. He said, you know, it's funny. He said, you're here to be a tank mechanic. He said, but we have a hard you have 70% on your test. He said, somehow you've got a 69. I don't know what you're here for. I said, what? What it really was, everybody in that platoon was RA, which meant regular Army, and I was a draftee. He wasn't going to let draftee go through his course. So he tried to hurt me, and I'm a holdover for another 8 weeks. And so we got into the holdover situation, and they put us on permanent KP, which is, you guys, I think you know what that is. So what's the worst job? It's KP, is what they call pot and pan man. So they got me on pot and pan man, and I'm washing these pots and pans, and he better squeak when the mess sergeant comes over and touches them, right? And I'm saying, hey, come on, give me more pots and pans. I ain't got enough pots and pans, you know what I mean? So the guy, it was a black guy, was the mess sergeant. Yeah. And he come over and said, Jordan, get off them pots and pans. He said, well, you're the only brother I got down here, man. He said, you're in charge of the rest of the KPs. I said, okay. Oh man, I rode them guys hard. Give God a little bit of authority, you know what I mean? But what they did was, it gave me another 8 weeks, okay, in the United States. And then orders came down for me to go to Vietnam. I'll never forget that phone call. I told my mom and dad, I said, hey, don't worry, I'm going to be all right, but it looks like I got orders to go to Vietnam. And they were scared shitless. Looking back on it now, I didn't realize what it must have been like for them while I'm over there. So I get in country, go through the what they call ARVN training and all that, and go in country, and going to. And anybody ever says they weren't scared when they got there, it's lying. But the best image I can give that I've seen in movies was Platoon, when those guys land. You know, we landed at Cam Bay, and I thought they were going to throw me a rifle and tell me to get down, come on, you know. But it was a relatively safe area. Then I got further on, I got the orders to go further up north. And I'll never forget this as long as I lived. It was very confusing, you know, and you also left Vietnam in Cam Bay. So the guys leaving, all hollering, short, FNG, fucking do guy, FNGs, ha, I'm going home. You know, well, I was scared. And then turn around, and I'll never forget this, because I don't know if this really happened or not. But I turned around, there's a guy standing alongside of me, and he got like a 3-day growth of beard, and he had beads around his neck. And he said, you're new, huh? And I said, yeah. He said, where are you going? I said, I don't know. He said, come on, let's go get a beer. So there was the EM club there, and we went and had a beer. Then he was asking me what my MOS was. And I told him 36B20. He said, what's that? I said, real vehicle mechanic. He said, oh man, don't worry about it. You'll probably get sent to someplace in the rear. You may not even get shot at. Don't listen to these assholes. So, and I turned around and thanked him, he was gone. He appeared and he disappeared. So I'm not sure if that's just a figment of my imagination or not. Long story short, get up to where I'm supposed to be in the rear area, and some things happened anyhow. You turn around, they made me a Jeep driver and go on a Ford fire base. Excuse me. So I'm on this Ford fire base, and one of the people I drove a Jeep for was Lieutenant Cali, the My Lai massacre guy. I knew him as Rusty. Right. And anyhow, I've seen some shit that I wish I'd never seen. I'll tell you that, but I ain't no hero. You know, the guys out in the field had it worse than I did, and the guys in the rear had it better than I did. So it was all that. But when I was in the first rear area, before I went to the fire base, well, let me back up. So we're in this called a combat center. And when you first get in the country, I don't know if everybody did, but where I was, you went to this combat center. And you're in country, but you're right next to the China Sea and right behind the hospital. You couldn't have been any safer. Well, we didn't know that. It was the first time I ever seen anybody scared to death, because when the sirens went off, you went to your bunkers. We didn't shoot weapons yet. We were in this bunker, and we're all scared because I think I don't have anything to fight with, right? And I hear this, and I said, "Hey, motherfucker, what are you laughing at? This ain't funny." And I punched this guy, right? This ain't funny. And then the guy, no. He shined a light on him, and the guy was literally scared to death. He was in a ball, and it was just shaking and shivering, going, making this noise. The medics had to come get him and shit. And I thought, whoa. Anyhow, so that's where your first introduction to country was. Then I went to the Ford Fire Base, and the Ford Fire Base I was on was called Hill 69. And I was driving a Jeep, but I was working for Tactical Operations Center, TOC, they call it. I can't make any shit up. So I'm up there. I don't know where I am or what I'm doing yet, you know, but they told me the main thing, they had sirens too. And excuse me, every bunker, between every bunker, I mean, every little hooch, so it was a bunker. And they told us, they said, look, when the siren goes off, you head to the top. Your responsibility is to protect the top. Okay. So we had incoming. And this is sounds, it won't make sense to anybody else. It makes sense to me. You're just thump, thump, thump. That's incoming. When you hear them, incoming. So I grab them. I grab my weapon, my steel pot, my flak jacket, put my boots off and run over. I'm in my drawers and I run over to the top and I run inside. And this captain says, Jordan, put that weapon down. I said, yes. He put down M16 down. I said, here. He gave me the breech and a barrel of an M60 machine gun, and through the ammunition over my shoulders, get the fuck out there and kill any goddamn thing that moves. I said, yes, sir. I go outside and I'm standing there and I thought, I ain't never seen a machine gun before. I'm a mechanic. So mechanic, I turn around, I put it together, click, this clicks, that clicks, this clicks. Here, pull this back, and I'm ready to lock and load. He said, Jordan, he walked out, Jordan, what are you going to do? I said, I won't kill any fucking thing that moves. I had no idea I was in a relatively safe area. If anybody would walk by, I'd lit them up. That was my first introduction. And it went on from time to time, but as these guys come in from the field, they're all smoking. Now, back to the combat area too. When I first got in country, first cannabis I ever saw was this guy got to out to the city village and brought back these 10 joints he got for $1. They were about a foot long, and I think they were wrapped in wax paper, and they call them Nuke Mound 175. Well, Nuke Mound 175 was a gigantic artillery piece. But we're sitting in front of the CM club, and this guy says, hey, look what I got. What do you got, man? He said, I got down the village. And I said, is that pot? And he says, yeah. I said, let's smoke that shit. He said, okay. We start puffing on this thing right out in the open in front of everybody, not even knowing what the hell we're doing. And I'll never forget, this guy was real tall and skinny, and I'm puffing on this thing, and I look at him, and all of a sudden his neck went, yep. And I thought, what? And I start laughing. I couldn't stop. That was my first introduction of cannabis in none. So he turned around and got to why I got used to it and all that. It was a regular thing we did every night. As a matter of fact, we used to listen to Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club playing on a tape. And all Polish guys in the military were ski, because this guy's name was Skrymowski. And he would narrate. And we spoke, and it was like every night going to a different show. This guy, it was really, I love Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the album. And the thing was, when we get rockets and shit would happen every once in a while, he was straighten right up. And then, I know, like, not like being drunk laying on the floor, you don't give a shit what's happening, but you was straighten right up with the pot. So, and I got home, and then we all know what that was like. That wasn't nice at all. So, I mean, I went back to my old neighborhood. I was in, so here's the way I explain it. I was in combat on Monday. Tuesday, I was in the rear. Tuesday afternoon, I was in Cannon Bay. By Thursday, I'm in Alaska. And Friday, I'm in Philadelphia. It's going around so fast, I don't know what the hell's happening. So I go back to my old neighborhood. Hey, man, I ain't seen you for a while. Where you been? Oh, I went to Vietnam. What you go there for, you asshole? Now I've got two choices. Either I'm going to choke this person in front of me, or I'm going to stuff it. And I stuffed it. And I stuffed it. I wouldn't even tell anybody I was in Vietnam. You know, it was a strange, strange time in this country. And I went to, so I couldn't get with those guys, and they seemed like little kids. And I couldn't get with the hippies because at the time the hippies were flying the Viet Cong flag or the MJ flag, the red and blue and a yellow star in it. And we'd be at concerts, we'd rip it down. So I went with the motorcycle guys. And oh boy, did I go with them. We had fun. And the whole time, as my life progresses, see, I have no idea I have PTSD. So, I mean, I didn't know who you were, but I didn't like you. You know what I mean? And just stay away from me, except for some of my really close friends, which were biker guys, that people kind of stayed away from us anyhow. You're talking, Jesus Christ, you're talking 50 years ago now. But anyhow, so as I got away from them, and as time went on, I had some bad things happen, and I had to go to the VA hospital. And it's when I got out of jail, what happened, and I went to the VA hospital, and I talked to a guy, and this guy said, Jordan, I know you, biggest black man I've ever seen in my life. Never met him before in my life. And one of the things I did was, and I got into trouble for shooting a gun in my neighborhood, to put it mildly. And then when the cops got there, I told them, I remember we got in a fight, the guy hit me in the head with a board, and I saw all this blood on me. And I thought, I'll show these son of a bitches. They have no idea who they're messing with. And at the time, I had an arsenal in my basement. I did. And so I went and got a couple smoke grenades, loaded my shotgun up, and popped smoke and come out like fucking Rambo and shooting my neighborhood up. Well, anyhow, it didn't end well. And the cops got there. And I remember looking up the street. Now, this is what I remember. I see all these lights and sirens, and I was thinking, wow, this is all for me. This is like the circus coming to town. Well, they didn't feel the same way I did. They weren't happy to see me. They thumped on me for a while, and then I in jail, and then they let me get out of jail, and I went over to the VA, and I said, my name is Bob Jordan. I need to talk to somebody. And the biggest black man I ever seen in my life come through the door and say, Jordan, I knew you was a Vietnam vet. Come on in here. I got to talk to you. He said, I know you. I said, I don't know you. I've never seen you before. So what happened was, I was telling him this story, and he turns around to me and says, when I put my foot on the bumper of the car and tore my shirt off, let's go, motherfucker, let's go. And they did. They won, I lost. But anyhow, and I tell him that story, and he stops and he says, Jordan, why do you think he did that? I said, what? He said, put your foot on the bumper of the car and try to threaten the cops. He said, I'm a drunken asshole. He said, well, you've got PTSD. I said, I got TBY. What do I got? He said, you've got PTSD. I couldn't even say it at the time. Well, I always noticed that I didn't act very well when I ingested alcohol. And through the years, I found out now that cannabis, it helped me with the nightmares, and I could go to sleep and not even dream. So then, as time went on, I got married. And I was doing pretty good. I always thought of pot as just something to get high with, something to party with. Well, when I got married to my wife in 82, anyhow, and then she got diagnosed with ALS, and I smoked every once in a while, but I was mostly drinking, and she liked smoking. But back then it was called brickweed. It was Mexican brickweed, the stems and sticks and all that shit in it, and then anyhow, she got ALS, and it was bad. It was bad, really bad. And the doctor gave her 3 to 5 years to live. I was living in Delaware at the time. Then what happened was, the doctor said warmer weather would be better for her. So she went down to Florida to visit some friends. Now, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know this, but she really went down to save up her muscle relaxer so she could commit suicide on and come back home, take all her muscle relaxer, go to sleep, and not wake up. I said, holy shit. So now I'm not knowing this, but when she was down there, they smoked a form of pot that was called cannabis. It was called Maca Gold. When I picked her up at the Philadelphia airport, she had a valve between her boobs, like a glass cigar thing. Get this, get this. I said, oh man, God, we're going to go to jail. You're smuggling dope. It was a big bust then. I mean, that's when they would put you in jail for 5 years for one joint and stuff. So you turn around and I was really upset, and I didn't believe her. But then as time went on, I noticed she started getting better. Her disease started to slow up. A lot of things happened in between us and then, and we went down. So we ended up moving to Florida. I lost everything up in Delaware. Mom and dad died, the house went in foreclosure, all kinds of stuff happened. So some friends put us up in Florida, and we got down there and we heard about this gentleman by the name of Donnie Clark. And he was the head of the Maca Gold gang, which grew this Maca Gold that stopped Kathy's disease. So we turn around and find out that this guy, Donnie Clark, got busted, got life in prison without possibility of parole for growing his cannabis. And that was around early 90s. So lo and behold, Clinton didn't pardon him, but he commuted his sentence. And when he commuted his sentence, we met him. Ain't going all that, but anyway, and we got to be friends with Donnie Clark. Well, the Maca Gold that he grew, what we found out was that the feds had eradicated it, but originally, from what we could figure out, it stopped her. That's what it stopped her disease. And as long as she get high quality cannabis, then she'd be all right. And then, so I was growing in my backyard, and they busted me for that and wanted to put me in jail for 5 years for growing cannabis. They had me for 3 plants that weren't even in bud yet. I had them outside stretching them, and I had 20 clones, didn't have roots yet. And somebody took a picture of them. That a realtor come by. It's a long story, but anyhow, and sent it to the police department. Next thing I know, I'm sitting in my easy chair, and here comes these cops up the driveway. They didn't have their weapons drawn, but they had their hands on their weapons. So all hell broke loose and all that. And you know, I tried to kick them off the property. That didn't work either. But it made the papers. Now, what happened? This is how I got into activism. Well, there was a guy in Florida by the name of John Morgan. He's still one of, if not the biggest lawyer, personal injury lawyers in the country. He saw it on the news. So he starts talking about Kathy Jordan and Bob Jordan, how a disabled veteran and one with ALS, and how the cops raided their house and all this stuff. So when they start talking to him, then they come talk to us and say, what do you think, John Morgan? And the first thing I said, thank God it didn't last long, but the first time I said, what do you think about John Morgan? John Morgan don't know about pot. He's a Johnny come lately. I wish I wouldn't have said that, but I did. But anyhow, as time went on, now this is how we got to be where we were in the movement. That he started this petition. Now, in between him putting that, the first time he put it on petition for medical marijuana use in Florida, it failed. We worked real hard for that. And meantime, we're working on these petitions. We're going to Tallahassee, and we're talking to anybody that'll listen to us. And when we were talking about cannabis, the first thing they did was laugh at us. You want what? Nobody will ever do that, you know? And persistence pays off. So year after year, we ended up going back there. And it kept getting higher and higher. And then this guy, John Morgan, he puts the petition back on. He got so many signatures, they put it back on. And then we won this time. And what happened when we won, the state said, okay, you can have it, but you can only have it in oil form, you know, vape pens and stuff like that. So I talked to John Morgan. I said, John, that doesn't work for Kathy. she needs the whole flower. It helps her cough and dry up her mouth and all the stuff that it does, you know what I mean? And eases her muscle spasms and stuff. So he sues the state, and he uses Kathy, my wife, as the main, I guess you say, plaintiff. And we sued the state, and damn, we won. And when we won that, I mean, that made national news and stuff like that. But I just kept doing this thing that I felt I had to do because it was the right thing to do. Instead of now, I'm convinced that cannabis isn't just something you party with. It's medicine. And when I've seen what it can do, and then as we grew and people start knowing more about us and stuff like that, they turn around and we met more people to come to us and tell us what cannabis did for them. I'm going, holy moly, man, there's a lot more to this stuff than I have ever knew. And so we got that, we won that case, and now flower, we sued the state for flower because you need the whole plant. Well, once we won that, all hell broke loose. All these dispensaries opened up, and nobody knows who we are today. But the only reason there's flower in Florida is because of what we did, you know. And we sued the state, so I kind of take pride in that. And it's getting bigger and bigger. It's almost normalized now. They know every year in Tallahassee they're going to talk about cannabis. But when we went there and we were by ourselves, nobody'd even talk to us, wouldn't give us the time of day. And then a guy named Jeff Clemens and another representative introduced the first bill in Florida. It was called the Kathy Jordan Medical Marijuana Bill. And of course, they didn't give us a hearing, but it was introduced. And now all these years later, everything's fine, and you know, everybody's using it. But and then as far as when it gets, I've met some young veterans, and I was in Washington D.C. with Weeds of Warrior guys, and we're protesting down there right in Washington, right across from the VA, trying to bring attention to this. Which you and Al, Mike, you and Al have really been leaders on, which I really appreciate. But trying to get into the VA system, and I'm sitting there, and at first I see these young bucks, these young guys. There's one guy, Crazy Kevin, big Marine, and I'm sitting we're in a park, we're camping in the park, and I know they want to talk to me, but I'm not going to approach them. So they sat down and started talking to me, and I'll never forget this guy, Kevin. He said, "What's your story, man? What are you doing here, old man?" You know, I said, "Well, you know, I kind of like cannabis for PTSD, and I think you guys should have it." We get into this conversation, it was like time went away. There was no time difference. He was a combat veteran. He did what he was supposed to do, like we all did. Come home, was all screwed up in the head, and then tried to take the pills and all that the VA gave him. He got hooked, just like I did, you know. And I thought, oh, 50 years between our conflicts, and he's got the same story as mine, you know. So, you know, I've been an activist, and wherever I can help veterans and tell my story, I'm willing to do it. So I'm talking a lot. Let you guys talk.
I appreciate it.
That's a good story, Bob. I know you left a lot out. Your history is remarkable. I like your observation, though, about that Marine Kevin and the fact that you guys were 50 years apart, different wars, different everything. But your reaction to the year or whatever he served over there was pretty much the same. And Michael and I have interviewed dozens, I don't know, hundreds of vets, I guess, and it's always the same. And we had one very renowned veteran that we interviewed say on the show that, hey, it doesn't really make any difference whether you're in Vietnam, where he was, or fighting for Julius Caesar. The reaction is the same to the combat. And that's why as veterans, Michael and I understand, and I think veterans understand that a veteran is a veteran is a veteran. You get different strings pulled over the time, and you go here or you go there. It's what it is. And you do what you do. And you die or you live. It's really just kind of luck. So we all know that we're all the same in essence, just like you and Kevin are exactly the same in so many ways. The only thing that I would, it's a habit I have, and I'd just like to say it again, is over the course of my tenure with veterans and cannabis, which goes back to about 1990, I have continually told healthcare professionals in my presence that I wish they would drop the D from post-traumatic stress. You can add an S if you want, call it a syndrome, but it's not a disorder. A disorder in medical terms means your behavior is aberrant. It is not normal. However, those of us with post-traumatic stress all react in a certain way that is, in essence, normal when you've been traumatized. We have a certain way to react to various antagonisms that come our way. And this is true of everybody with post-traumatic stress. And that, how do you get post-traumatic stress? Get in an automobile accident, get run over when you're a kid on your bicycle. I mean, a tree falls on you. Who knows? If some kind of trauma happens to you, you're subject to post-traumatic stress. And the other thing that I learned, we all learned as counselors working there, that was that the more traumas you have, the worse it is. One thing we found, I was a counselor for the Agent Orange program in Virginia, and all of us found out after we started talking to the vets that something of the order of 50, 60%, I'm not clear on the number, but it was around there, 50% of the vets that we had diagnosed with post-traumatic stress from combat situations had post-traumatic stress before they ever went to Vietnam. So there's that repetition of a bad trauma. And then, of course, you take a guy like Bob, he's out at a forward fire base, he's out there for 300 some days, he gets traumatized 247 times. That's a lot of trauma. It's a lot to overcome. So the disorder part I don't like. I like to call it a syndrome or just post-traumatic stress is what it is, regardless of the source. And while I'm on it, just so veterans and everybody else can understand, how do you get post-traumatic stress? How do you get it? Okay, trauma. There's three ways to end up with post-traumatic stress. You can be the victim of a violent, let's say you get shot. Okay, you now traumatized, you have post-traumatic stress from being the victim. Or you're the shooter and you shoot somebody, or you shoot them, you kill them, you hurt them. Well, you've just traumatized them and you really at the same time. And the third way is that you're a third party over there and you watch this process go down. That is also a form of stress that will traumatize you and give you post-traumatic stress. So if anybody listening to this has those kind of experiences in your life, I mean, I gave you some dramatic ones, but you get the point, I hope. Get some help. Talk to somebody about it. It helps to talk. We have all learned that as veterans, and I know the veterans are enough out of me. Michael?
I appreciate that, Al. And I would just point out that it's the very fact that not everyone that experiences trauma suffers the full wrath of symptoms of post-traumatic stress that it, I think, got labeled a disorder in the first place. It is a fact that it doesn't affect everyone. The post-traumatic stress affects people differently, and that it's cumulative, like you were saying. That's something that definitely is something that we've observed, easily through the case studies of those that we've talked to. But I was just thinking that you've taken a great sort of memory lane of sort of one string of activism in the cannabis movement. And I hope the future is listening. I hope people understand where we came from, because you're right. The people that go to a dispensary have no idea how this happened, but you just described how it happened. And very much, it's like that famous movie, with Jimmy Stewart, what would happen if you were never born. The world would be completely different, and the activism in Florida would have been completely different, and the timeline would have unfolded in such a different way. It's a wonderful life for those who want to look up the movie. I crossed over with you on the first, I think it was the first initiative, because we were doing a visit tour. Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access was trying to figure out how to communicate with the VA. And we were talking with the VA in Washington, and we were talking with the VA in various facilities and through directors and through different entities within the VA pain management system and everything. But we decided, let's try to talk to a VISN, like identify and reach out to and talk to a VISN. This is something that people don't even know exists. It's above the hospital level. You have the Veterans Integrated Service Network with, I don't know, 15, 20 hospitals in each one. And there's what, 6 or 7 or 10 of them. I don't even keep track across the country of these VISNs. And I can't remember, I think it was the Sunshine Network, the Florida VISN that we went across. Yeah. And Bob joined me on these visits inside the facility. We had a coordinated approach where we brought the initiative actually to veterans in their local community. And that was outside and not connected to the VA. In fact, we did it often behind the VA where they couldn't see us. And that perplexed them because they knew we were coming, but they didn't know where we were. And they were looking out by the front gate and they were walking around and looking for us and stuff. And then Bob and I come walking in the front door, 2 veterans, just, low key as can be, walking right into the leadership suite and talking to the directors of the facility. But I remember one thing that you said. I was trying to capture the essence of these meetings for the movement, for the drug policy reform movement, in what I call sort of my poetic style. I was trying to capture the moment of what it was like inside the VA facility. And I remember you reading one of the reports and telling me, gosh, I was there, Mike, and you're talking about stuff that happened right in front of me. And I was there. And how did you capture all this stuff? Yeah, I think I captured your quote, right? Did I?
Yeah, I remember you wrote down what we did that day, and at night, every night you keep like a little journal, and you'd read at nighttime what you wrote. And I said to you, I said, Mike, I know I was with you today, and I did the same thing you did, but you got it. I mean, I walk into a door, and I walk through the door and go in there, and we're going to meet these big shots, whoever they are. Well, Mike writes, we entered the door, and off the left-hand side was the guard sitting there watching us, and so walked by and made this. He's got a gift, but yeah, I remember that because I said, damn, I know I was with you, but I don't remember all that stuff. Very observant, very, very good. Very good job, Mike.
Yeah, man.
One thing I'd like to point out, Kathy Jordan, I've known her, I guess, as long as I've known Bob, I don't know, 25 years. Every time, every moment that I've known Kathy, she has had ALS. Now, the life experience of an ALS diagnosed patient is at best 3 to 5 years. Now, I just said I've known Kathy for 25. She's outlived 4 of her doctors. What Bob was talking about, the particular strain of cannabis that he grew, she found he grew, it was totally responsible for her. It is totally responsible for her still being alive. ALS patients, by the way, one of the main reasons how they died is they basically choked to death. They drown in their own liquids. And as people know, cannabis smokers, people that smoke it, experience dry mouth. And that's part of the secret of ALS patients using cannabis. By using the cannabis, it dries their mouth out. And Michael's putting out cotton mouth. Yeah, think of cotton mouth, dry mouth. And that's what an ALS patient needs, dry mouth. And that has helped her. And I hope by saying this on the radio that other people that have ALS or know somebody with ALS will tell them if they use cannabis and they smoke it, they'll be helping themselves immensely. And the smoking thing, let's get that over with. Bob talked about smoking it, has to be smoked. He talked to John Morgan, we got to have smoke. They got smoke, remarkable. that story. He made it sound like, it was 17 sentences. It was remarkable. Anyway, cigarette smoke, wood smoke, it's bad smoke. Cannabis smoke is not bad smoke. A very, very famous researcher, physician, Dr. Donald Tashkin, he's head of pulmonary department of UCLA, was hired by the federal government to do a pulmonary study with cannabis, some cannabis smokers. And basically, like they always do, they wanted Dr. Tashkin to end up with a study and show how bad cannabis is for you. So anyway, the study went on forever, years, and it had thousands of patients. And it had four groups: people that didn't smoke anything at all, people that smoked cigarettes, people that cigars, people that smoked cigarettes, cigars, and pot, people that smoked only cannabis, whether it was medically or recreational, made no difference. We had four categories. At the end of the study, years and years, decades, thousands of people, Dr. Tashkin made his announcement that people that smoke cigars, cigarettes, even those that smoke cannabis at the same time, had to expect lung cancer, COPD at the national level. Those figures held. People that didn't smoke anything at all were going to get cancer and COPD at a lesser level, but they're going to get it. He didn't have one patient, not one patient in all those years that smoked only cannabis that got lung cancer, not one. And the reason we know now is that cannabis itself destroys malignant cells, cancer cells. It does it in a number of ways. I'll talk about that another time. But if you have ALS and you need to smoke it, you smoke it, you'll be okay.
Hey, rarely do I feel compelled to say something, but I do feel compelled to say something about Dr. Tashkin and tell a little bit of a personal story here. So I hope you'll indulge me, Bob, and we'll get back to your story in a sec. But Dr. Tashkin is such an amazing fellow, and I met him at Dr. Nahas, Gabriel Nahas, the old infamous anti-marijuana doctor that died at 100 years old several years back. Columbia University emeritus professor Dr. Nahas had a conference, and I got to meet the good doctor from what was he out there in California, Dr. Tashkin, UCLA.
UCLA.
Yeah, UCLA.
Dr. Tashkin, UCLA.
Yeah. And I was getting ready to do this conference, the Patients at a Time conference faculty. And I said, Al, everybody, and this is before his study was done. It was a 25, 30-year study, as Al was talking about. And it was just about to finish, but it wasn't done yet. And from talking to him and getting to know the guy, I told Al a couple of things. I said, I like him. I like Dr. Tashkin. I think he's a good guy. I think he's following fair scientific principles. And from what I talked to him about, I think he would be a real asset for this conference. And I think if you ask him questions that don't say, pro or con, he's been asked so much pro or con marijuana stuff by the government. They want con and everybody else wants pro from him. And he's sort of caught in the middle. I said, you get him in here and ask him what from his research already can we glean and learn to help patients. And he actually came to the conference. And the part I want to tell, the story that I want to tell isn't even that. This is the cute part, right? He comes and he was a little bit nervous to present at Patients at a Time, but he did, and he spoke and he was well received. And then he came back after the study was released, a whole different person, because now the government snubbed him. I mean, the government, he was the government's darling for 25 years, as they quoted his, he came up with a couple of, basic hypotheses at the beginning of the 25 years. One was based on the non-filtered cigarette, because we smoked joints that were non-filtered. He thought, that must be about 3 times worse than a cigarette. Boom. That's the government's line about a joint being 3 times worse than a cigarette, or in fact, any number of times worse than a cigarette is all drawn from that hypothesis from Tashkin. Believe it or not, worldwide talking point. Number 2, what was that? Because you inhaled it deeply, and he even described it. He was like that, and mimicking a pothead smoking a joint and holding it hard in their lungs. He said that's horrible, and based on that way of smoking, I thought you might have all these cascade of problems. and he didn't find those problems. And when the government snubbed him and he came back and he was well received again at Patients at a Time, he was like an old friend coming back to our conference. And his data really does support what Al said. Now, the reason I feel compelled to speak also is because the elements in cannabis smoke, when you smoke a marijuana cigarette, there are many very dangerous, nasty elements in there, but not nicotine. And evidently nicotine is like a very much a triggering factor in enabling these carcinogenic other materials in there to go, forward towards disease, whereas the cannabinoids do the opposite. And I actually threw that at him as a hypothesis. I said, could it be the cannabinoids in there that are minimizing the damage from the danger, acknowledging the dangerous components in the smoke? And he looked at me and he took his chin. He said, yeah, it's a very good point. Very interesting question. Anyway, Bobby, what do you think about all this?
Well, when we went to court, when we sued the state, John Morgan helped, and Kathy's the lead plaintiff. One of the questions they asked was that have any of your doctors, when she was on the stand, said any of your doctors told you not to smoke? Now, at the very beginning, when she first came down with ALS, okay, the doctors told her not to smoke anything because you're going to need all your lung capacity. You're going, and like Al said, it's a horrible disease. You'll drown in your own fluids in 3 to 5 years. Well, when she was on the stand, and the guys, the prosecutor, has any of your doctors ever told you just stop smoking cannabis? And she said at first they did, but now what they tell me is, she said, I just had a lung test done after smoking cannabis for 25 years or whatever it's been, more than 25 years. Her lung capacity for an ALS patient having it over 20 years is like 78%, which is unheard of. So what the doctors would say now is that, well, here's the thing, that they say they want to agree with you, but they won't say it publicly. They'll tell you privately, whatever you're doing, keep on doing it, because something's working here. But don't tell anybody I said that. So Kathy had been tested for her lung function, and at her age and what she's been through, it's outstanding. And the only thing we can contribute to is the cannabis. When she was, when we first got to Florida, we went to the MDA. I think that's what it was. Anyhow, maybe you're saying that wrong, but we went to a clinic, for ALS patients. We went there for about 6 months, for a year. And then the doctor said, wait a minute, I want to ask you something. He said, what are you doing that all my other patients are dying and getting worse and you're staying the same? And she asked because I was in the room, she asked the doctor's assistant to leave. And when he left, she said, I smoke marijuana. He said, what? She says, I use cannabis, marijuana. And he went, well, you know what? I'm not going to give you a prescription for it. It's illegal. You know what I mean? And whatever you're doing, keep doing it, but don't tell anybody I said that. And for somebody with ALS at her and the longevity that she has, we can't contribute to anything but cannabis. And when they busted me for, and they, well, how do you know it works? Right? And I said, I don't. I said, but I can tell you what I've observed is when we have it, she's better. And when she doesn't have it, she gets sick. That's all I need to know. And they well, this and that. And then I used to say to people, when I did an interview, I'd say, when I'm sick, I don't call a cop. When somebody's breaking into my house, I don't call a doctor. And what you have is people with no right at all to say things that they're saying about cannabis because they don't know. I mean, Al, Mary Lynn been doing it, and you guys been doing Patients at a Time for how long? And do you remember back in the day when we tried to get a conference? You could, oh yeah, we got conference rooms available for you. What's your conference on? Cannabis. Oh, you know what? We don't have any place. Al, you can speak to that a lot better than me, but people today don't realize what we did was putting our ass on the line. we stood out front. You know what I mean? We're the tip of the spear. All I know is there's not a bone in my body or cell in my body that ever thinks I did anything wrong by promoting cannabis as medicine. It is legitimate medicine. And that's enough.
We'll go back to Tashkent. We'll go back to Tashkent. Michael's right. Dr. Tashkent came to our first conference in 2000. It was 2000 at the University of Iowa. Their medical school and nursing school sponsored it. But Dr. Tashkent came and, as Michael described, gave a very good overview of what he was doing without saying what he thought about it all. But then he came back again, as Michael says, I believe it was at a cinema, Michael, in 2008, might be wrong, but I might have the date wrong, it might be 210, someplace in there. He had finished the study and he came back and he reported what I told you about. Nobody got any lung cancer, nobody. Astounding. So here was the guy that had been quoted, as Michael says, internationally about how this stuff was going to screw you up somehow, your lungs or something, and bingo. All of the statements they made were proven absolutely false. And I noted at the time, and I know now that they've never ever mentioned that, like, oh, we said it wrong, but they did. They did a lot. Do you want to go into the backstory of John Morgan at all about family?
Well, what happened was
no.
You all right?
Well, you don't have to do that. I don't know if that's private, but it you know, to me, John Morgan has done the right thing. I'm not sure. I remember dealing with his political advisors and stuff and talking to these guys who were getting paid a lot of money and advising them on how to advise him. And of course, they didn't do it my way, exactly, you know. But I still think that Morgan, at least in Florida, did a remarkable thing. He had the money to do it. He had the desire to do it, and he damn well did it with a lot of help from people like you, of course. The thing that we always said, I say we, VMCA, Michael, I, and those we run with, always thought years ago that if Florida would capitulate to the marijuana reasoning, that the South would follow. And damned if we weren't right about that. Florida came in with the Jordans and others leading the charge. And then we had Georgia and Virginia and it's Texas. I mean, it's done down here. And these guys, Kathy and Bob Jordan, were the pinnacle. They were the ones that stood up everywhere. They go to a veterans lounge or they go to see the Lions Club. They didn't care. We're going to talk to you. We're going to tell you the truth about what we do and what we think and why you're getting screwed. Remarkable, the stuff that went on down here. Bob Plapshorn helped with his silver tour. I also, Herb Rosenfeld, one of the federal patients, was all over the place saying, look at me. I'll point out that too. The Patients at a Time did a study in 2001. It's a cannabis use study. It was done in Missoula, Montana hospital. We looked at the 5 legal patients that were getting really shitty cannabis from the University of Mississippi. And, but they've been using it, you know, for 20, 30 years. And so we did an incredible study on them. They did 7 different tests, brains, lungs, everything. And what we found out is on the lungs again, was that other than mild bronchitis, and all of these folks were in their 60s or 70s, they had great lungs. Nobody had cancer. Nobody had COPD. So again, it reinforces that Kathy's method of using cannabis, which allows her to titrate. She knows what she needs to quell her spasticity, to get her cotton mouth going, whatever the hell she knows she needs, she can do it. And she can do it without harming herself or her lungs. And Bob minimizes what he did, but he kept her alive by growing a plant facing down the federal government and everybody. He faced down everybody. It was remarkable. I thought I thought when it was going down, Bob, you weren't going to get away with this one, but you did, sir. Nice going.
Well, the thing is, Al, and,
Yeah, that was cool.
when I got faced with this, you know what I mean, and they said that they were going to put me in jail for 3 to 5 years for growing cannabis, and I said, "You are?" They said, "Yeah, we'll give you a pre-trial diversion." I said, "Well, what's that?" And they said, "Well, we'll put you on like probation for a year, no smoking, no activism, keep your mouth shut, and if you're clean at the end of the year, we may let you off the hook." Now, at the time, I had Mike Minority and Norm Kent, and so I said, "Well, I don't want your pre-trial diversion." I said, "Am I entitled to a jury trial?" And they said, "Yeah." Now that was the scary part, because Norm and Mike Minority both said, "Bob, you can lose this, you can end up going to jail." And that's where that's the moment I took my stand. I said, "I don't care. I mean, I don't want to go to jail, but damn it, this is worth fighting for. All I am is a guy that's trying to keep his wife alive." And you're right, Al. I mean, I grew, but like I said, there's something in me that I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. And if I went to trial, a jury of my peers is not going to put me in jail for 20 plants or whatever it was. Actually, it was only 3, but the other one didn't even have roots or anything. So that's where I took my stand. That was the moment. And I thought about it and I thought about it. I said, "Hey, some things are worth fighting for, and this is one of them." And then after that, that's when all hell broke loose and started getting all this attention and news cameras at our house and Huffington Post and national stories and all this stuff. And like, you know, people say I minimize what I did because it's not, I don't do that on purpose. I just don't like blowing my own horn. You know what I mean? "Oh, I did this, or I did that." What I did, I think anybody would do. And that's if they love their wife. I say, if there is somebody you love is terminally ill, and there's something across the street that can save them, and the cops tell me you can't go over there and get it, well, watch me. I'm going over there every time. And that's just my belief, right? And I stood up for what I believe in, and I look at it as an opportunity. And now the way things are going, yeah, we're just like in the military. We do the fighting, and the generals get all the medals and shit. In Florida, you can't play in the game unless you're a millionaire, so that cuts us out. But the thing of it is, we really have helped people, and it's lit. I'm in Maine now, and it's legal up here. And I went to a place called Cure Leaf the other day because I still use a vape pen anyhow. And I'm looking, and it's modern and it's clean, but everybody in there is my age. They're in their 70s. There wasn't no, you know, they ain't no kid thing. These older people are trying to get off these damn narcotics, and it's working. And the more it's working, it's a booming thing up here, and it's going to be across the whole country. I mean, it is. But I think as an activist, you know, as long as we've been doing this, I say we, I mean all of us have been doing this. I kind of think, well, it's at the end. Well, it might be at the end of our activism, but it's the beginning of a huge thing that the big money's in, you know. And I guess, you know, just because, you know, I don't get the monetary things, I take pride in what I did. I do. So.
Well, the thing I'll jump on that. We were all volunteers. Nobody ever got paid to do any of this. And I agree with you. I think Michael and I are doing this radio show for 2 reasons, I think, Michael. One is we want to historically document the work that people like you have done. And we want to document the work that present day or younger vets are doing, yeah, Iraq guys, Afghanistan vets, et cetera. And we're trying to do that. The other thing we're trying to do, again, is to raise awareness within the veteran community, especially, but within the VA and our leadership, if you call it that, in Congress. I wouldn't call it leadership, but they're up there. the people that are in Congress. We want them to understand that in the veteran world of healthcare, it is the VA by law is not allowed to be fair or just. They can only deal with a veteran like Bob in a state that like Bob's in. Maine is a legal cannabis state. Bob can use legal cannabis in Maine, go to the VA in Maine, and they say, what can I do for you? Vets that do not live in a legal state cannot use cannabis, go to a VA hospital, admit that they use cannabis, and be treated. If they admit they use cannabis, they're told, come back when you're clean, when your 30 days are up or something, when you can say you haven't used cannabis. So the whole notion in the VA system is with post-traumatic stress, with pain control, spasticity control, with all the stuff that cannabis is good for, it's not equal. And so this show is here to tell you that if you're in a state that isn't legal cannabis, you got to get your state legislators to make it real quick that way. And then as far as the federal government goes, they can just, this whole thing is absurd anyway. This plant is a plant that's considered a drug, and it's rated the worst thing in the world. But everybody knows it isn't. So the whole thing's absurd. So that's why we're doing this. Bob is correct, though. I mean, activism is gone here. The money has taken over the issue. As Bob says, you got to be a millionaire down here to play, except I know a lot of people that are still growing pot in their backyard and will continue to. But the trend is, the money too is the older people. They have retirement checks, they've got their mortgage paid for, and now they know they can use cannabis legally, and boy, it kills the pain. And their 50-year-old son sees it, and their 22-year-old grandson sees it, and it's getting around. And the reason it's getting around, again, I got to say this again, guys like Bob Jordan, Vietnam vets, stood up and said enough. This is enough. And none of us, the non-vets, ever wanted, and we made sure it didn't happen, wanted Iraq vets, Somali vets, vets to ever be treated like we were again. You will not treat warriors that way in this country again, ever, because of what you did to us. It's shameful. And there's no way for the older folks in this country to get away from it. I don't care who the hell you are and what your principles were. We weren't to blame. We were just there. And we did our job. You had some other people to blame and you didn't. And that contributes, to the post-traumatic stress problems that a lot of vets have. The Afghan vets now, I think, are facing a similar situation that we've faced, Bob. Don't you? Oh, Bob's going to leave me as I'm asking a question. But I think that they're facing the same problem. They were over there for years. They did their job. They lost their friends. They saw the country get better over time in certain respects, and now they're gone. And they really wonder whether it was worth it. And it was worth it. I tell Vietnam vets all the time, look at Vietnam now. It was screwed up when we were there, but look at it now. These people have a good economy. Their streets and their houses are clean. They have good water now. Their buildings are modern. They're a thriving, young, growing country, and they wouldn't have happened unless the Bob Jordans and the Al Burns were there. They wouldn't have. It's like Mike says, we all make a point here of fixing ourselves into the world. It's your turn, is what we're saying. Bob's done his number. You guys get up off your ass and follow him down the road. It's a good road to go. But you're not going to get a medal and you're not going to get any money. That's gone. Just do it because, like Bob says, it's the right thing to do. Thank you. That's my speech for today.
And a good one it was, Al.
So
you're always saying nice things to me.
So I want to thank you so much, Bob, for coming on. I on behalf of the cannabis movement, as a veteran, I actually started in the cannabis movement as just a cannabis activist. I was at school and volunteered at a local chapter. I was handing out flyers and info tables, and that was my introduction into the cannabis movement. You know, worked from there up to, you know, fighting against the DEA on the other side of the aisle in the appeals court in DC. That's a long road on the activist circuit, and I've covered the whole ground and the whole movement. And I'm sort of I guess one of the ad hoc cannabis movement historians, and I can say for a fact that we made a mistake in the way we handled, you know, the veterans coming back, the people that were out there with pot leaves on their shirt or whatever, that were mistreating the vets coming back from Vietnam. That was a mistake, and I really feel like it's something that you know, really, I don't know, like, you know, Bob was talking about the folks with the what was it, the flag that he was talking about that they were carrying around. Now, that's a mistake, you know, that it was that kind of thing is you do it as a protest, and then you don't really think of the ramifications of it, you know, what that really means. And I think that's careless. And we've had a lot of careless activism over the years in the marijuana movement. You know, Lennisworth, you know, talks about people getting arrested, you know, structurally setting up events where, you know, more people are going to get arrested, you know, encouraging violence. All these things are careless and not representative of the heart of the cannabis movement. But Al, I want to say something. It's kind of nuanced about the VA policy, but it's very important. So what you said is sort of technically true, but not necessarily true. You got to remember that the VA doesn't know state law. So, you know, whenever you talk about the VA and saying that they're going to react to something based on a state law, that's a misnomer. It's a reality, and I'll explain how it's a reality, but it's a misnomer. So, you know, they don't really know state law. They are no authority on state law. They can't say what the state does or doesn't. And what the policy says is that you're following you're following a state law, medical or otherwise, a marijuana law. They removed that after that first version of the policy. They removed all mention of medical, and they had to, again, because they don't know anything about medical. Remember, the federal government has it illegal, medical marijuana, and says in federal law that it doesn't exist. So they don't know anything about medical, and they don't know anything about state laws. And they've got this policy allowing you to participate in state laws and not have any negative impact inside the VA. That is based on basic ethics, and the ethics extend to those who aren't in the states that have legal access. So if you're actually using marijuana as a medicine, whether you're buying it from the illegal market or not, that should satisfy the most stringent ethicist, you know, in the VA system. In other words, you should be able to be treated using cannabis as a medicine, no matter where you source it, and not have that negatively interfere with your treatment at the VA. And you should be able to make that argument and make that defense, and I can help with that. That's what we've done based on ethics. The reality, like I said, the reality being the way you described, it is, because if the doctor says, are you using illegal drugs? And you say, I'm using marijuana, and you don't explain that you're using medical marijuana, and he just puts in the checkbox, you're using illegal drugs, and you got tested positive for using illegal drugs. Yeah, I can see it flowing that way. So in a certain way, whether it's my interpretation or your interpretation, really depends on the actions of the vet, how they handle themselves inside the VA. And, you know, you are using a medicine. If you have to source it illegally, so be it, but you're using medicine. And when you represent that to the doctor in that case, which doesn't necessarily happen and shouldn't necessarily happen, but we know a lot of things do happen. People are drug tested without their consent. That should never happen. I fought that and won, if you remember. I got that removed from my file when they drug tested me without consent, which is an amazing interaction with the VA to have them correct themselves. But yeah, a lot of vets are drug tested without their consent. And a lot of vets are kicked out of you know, because they used marijuana because it was boxed off as an illegal drug. And even worse, a lot of vets are then put into substance abuse disorder checkbox. They'll just check off the substance abuse disorder checkbox because you tested positive for marijuana. So the rabbit hole goes pretty deep. You can actually wind up with a pretty bad interaction with the VA system just because they perceived you as using illegal drugs because you use marijuana. So the rabbit hole that you're talking about, Al, is real and it's deep. I just want to try to talk about the nuance of it a little bit.
Well, yeah, the nuance is definitely there, but so is the nuance of, does the government have any medical belief in cannabis? Well, I mean, yeah, it holds 2 patents, 2 therapeutic cannabis patents the federal government has. I mean, I would say that's indicating that it believes that this. But there, you've got the DEA case that you're talking about, and the Supreme Court case that I was involved in with John Getman. We submitted to the government. This was 8 years ago. I put together a compilation of research that was over 100,000 pages of peer-reviewed literature. Yeah, I have in my possession documents from VA hospitals all over the country that have been given to me by various vets. Some of them go back into the 80s, where they were put in veteran groups that were using cannabis for various experiments within the VA. And I repeat again to everybody that wants to hear this, if they've got a senator, have them ask one question to the VA: what the hell happened? You've had millions of veterans in the VA system using cannabis with their knowledge. They're supposed to keep track of that. They're supposed to put this in the patient's files. Their own interior documents of the VA say that they're going to keep track of this and study it. It's been 11 years. What happened? Millions of vets, 11 years, thousands and thousands of pages of data. Michael, they know the answer. Now, whether they've said it or not, they haven't, but they know the answer. So all I'm saying to the vets out there is push them for it.
I love your spirit, Al, and I agree with you. I actually agree with for the record, I agree with everything you just said. But this is the thing, the truth that you just described, and the truth that the doctors should have access to. I mean, what you're talking about, the rank and file VA doctor should have the institutional ability, the institutional memory to find this information if they wanted to seek it out and wanted to understand cannabis and be a competent doctor and treat veterans inside the system competently and ethically, then yeah, Al, you're right. But the thing is, the policy of the VA and enacting that policy on a day-to-day basis is directed by law. And the law actually says in it that marijuana has no medical value. That's why they came out with the policy in 2010 and talked about medical marijuana. They gave all these examples of how it's used and everything. And then 1 year later, after the general counsel got a hold of it, I imagine, they gleaned out anything medical and just went with, state policy. And that's why, I guarantee that's why, because the federal law says that marijuana isn't a medicine. And what you just described is so beautiful because it flies in the face of that law so eloquently. I mean, how can you have a law on the books that says marijuana is
Keep in mind what Bob said earlier on when he was talking to us. He said, we used to go to Tallahassee and they'd laugh at me, right? I can remember being laughed at back in 1983, 84, 85, when I said something like that. People laughed at me. They thought I was crazy. I heard from hundreds of doctors and nurses, I believe in what you're doing, but don't use my name. And that's why we created Patients Out of Time. But everything we're saying is true. What you're saying is true, and I'm saying is true. I just want the government to say what's true. And they can do it tomorrow. There are a lot of pompous people up there making pompous statements about bullshit. And then you've got the other people up there who don't know, like Bob says, what the hell they're talking about anyway, and have no right to open their mouth. But at least now we're not being laughed at. They have to pay attention. And all I'm saying, I guess, and over is, if we got enough people to ask the right questions to enough senators, the VA will say, yeah, this stuff's okay. We've learned it's okay. We got millions of people that have come around and it's okay. And once that happens, the Congress will capitulate. Bob, it's time Michael's telling me it's time to go. I'd
All
like
right,
you to
well,
finish up with whatever you'd like to say.
Well, the thing of it is that when we talk about now, you got Normal's been around forever. I remember you guys were on the board and all that kind of stuff. And Normal, when we started when I started, I don't know how long anybody before us started in Florida, and we reached out to Normal. Normal said Florida is a 3-tier state. In other words, there's no way in hell you're ever going to get marijuana in Florida. So we won't give you any funds. And they were right at the time. But persistence pays off, and we were very persistent. We wouldn't go away. We kept coming back year after year after year. We filed the lawsuits. We did what we had to do, and damn it, we won. And you know, like so I just take pride in that. You know, looking at it at the time when I did it, it was just I got a very strong feeling that this is the right thing to do. And I don't know whether that's what drove me and helped keep my wife alive. And if it can help her, it can help veterans, it can help anybody else. It helped me. So, you know, when it's your time to get called upon, stand up, man. Stand up, because if you don't, ain't nothing going to change unless we change it. And that's the activist in me.
Thanks a lot, Bob. It was a great interview. We had a good time.
All right. Thanks a lot.
But thanks, everybody.
Take care out there.
This has been our 10th episode, our 10th podcast of Veterans Voices in this forum, in this media, and been a real pleasure to have Bob Jordan on up there in Maine. And we'll be saluting and signing off now. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Take care, Bob.
All right.